Hello, fellow souls with bodies, and welcome or welcome back to the What I've Learned of Magic podcast with me, your host, Morgan Rodheimer. It has been too long since I've done that introduction, and it feels so good to be back. I do apologize for the sound quality this episode, for there are a bajillion crickets. I don't know if you can hear them, and also my mic is on the fritz. But that's pretty typical for recording under a lunar eclipse, so you know what? I'll take it. And it is that very lunar eclipse that has inspired the theme of this episode, which is cleansing and releasing magic. I feel like eclipses are full and new moons on steroids, and a lunar eclipse is a full moon on steroids, and full moons are the time of the month where I tend to do most of my releasing and cleansing magic. So that's what inspired me. To be clear about cleansing magic, so cleansing magic isn't, well, it can be literal, where you literally clean your body or your home or your car or any sort of organization, anything that you would consider cleaning, cleansing, detoxing in the literal physical grounded sense can be used as a ritual, as long as you set intention beforehand and possibly even use ingredients that have the right correspondences for what you're trying to perform. But it can also be symbolic, as in an emotional or spiritual cleansing, and it can be relationship cleansing, whether that is setting boundaries with somebody or removing somebody from your life. But cleansing magic is one of the types of magics. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, though it's been a while. Cleansing magic is one that I've done a lot of. I feel like if there's, other than taking leaps of faith, I feel like it's been like taking leaps of faith, self-love magic, and then cleansing magic. Although sometimes all three of those are sort of like overlapped with each other. For instance, with a full moon, it is the culmination of something, but it is something that is brought to you because it is an opposition of the sun and the moon. Usually when there's an opposition, it's not something that you are doing. It is usually something that is being done to you, aka like receiving energy. So in order to have more room to receive what you've asked for, you have to cleanse and get rid of anything that might be taking up space and blocking your blessings. So for a full moon, let's say on the new moon, you ask for a car, but you still have your old car. You need a newer, better car. It's probably going to be hard to buy the newer, better car until you've sold or gotten rid of somehow the old car. Or I like my gardening metaphor of, let's say you need to plant something, but there's a bunch of weeds or old dead plants in the spot that you need to put the new plant. So you have to weed and cull your garden before you can put new seeds in, which I think I've also mentioned before. So for full moons, I like to make sure that not only is I'll do things like cleansing my bag, like my purse. I don't even mean to, it's just intuitive at this point, but I will go through my purse and just like take out all the old receipts and random things that have ended up in there. Tons of post-it notes and pens this time around. And every single one of my lip products, for some reason, I just needed them all. But you see, like, by removing them from my purse, now I don't have a 10-pound weight on my shoulder, which is nice. And if I need to put anything in my purse in the future, there is room for it. So it can be very literal, but I do also want to talk about the sort of emotional and spiritual sides of cleansing. So in the beginning, a lot of my cleansing magic had to do with limiting beliefs and any sort of energies that were sort of working against me in my life. And I I I was so out of alignment when I first started my spiritual journey, out of alignment with who I was as a person, out of alignment with the people who would treat me right, out of alignment with what I wanted to pursue as a purpose. And so cleansing was very vague for me. I had to be like, literally, universe, whatever, whatever has been in my way this whole time, even if it's been me or like something about me, I need you to help cleanse that and make it a more healthy version of that moving forward, or replace it. And like I said, it kind of started off a lot with limiting beliefs and like self work, sort of removing any sort of lack of self worth, which would be aligned with the self love magic, which I talked about in a previous episode. And I guess all of them kind of go back to self worth, because it was like, are you taking care of yourself properly? Are you setting proper boundaries? Are you thinking that you're capable of doing the things that you are trying to manifest, or are you sabotaging yourself? I originally was going to do a self-sabotage episode, like how to spot it, this episode, but I felt like with the eclipse, learning how to cleanse kind of helps with that a little bit, and is also more general for if that's not your personal issue at the moment. But cleansing can help you spot self-sabotage. Some witchy tools that I like to use for cleansing and releasing rituals, I like to sort it by element. And for instance, we're under the Libra Lunar Eclipse as I'm recording this, but this advice is timeless. But the Libra Lunar Eclipse is in an air sign and a fire sign. So if I wanted to do a release ritual, I would recommend either using some sort of incense for the air element, and smoke cleansing of any kind, like burning lavender or kitchen sage. Do not use white sage because that is culturally inappropriate, unless that is your culture. But I know that that has been misused a lot lately. Same with Palo Santo. But you can use lavender, you can use kitchen sage. There's tons of great herbs that you can use for the air element. Also, writing things down or talking things out, having really hard conversations with people, or talking to your guides, or journaling with, if you want to make it ritualistic, sometimes I will use a pen that I have charmed to help with my release magic, and then I will tear up the paper into a bunch of pieces and throw it away, setting intention all the while that what I've written on the paper is removed from my life evermore, etc. But then with the fire element, instead of ripping it up, maybe you burn it in a fire pit safely, please. Please be safe, especially during an eclipse. Anything can happen, and sometimes it's spiritual and symbolic chaos, and sometimes it is literal chaos. So, fire and air, they do tend to exacerbate one another. So, just be careful, please. But yeah, that would be a great example of using fire or air for a release ritual. If you're using water, some pretty obvious ones like shower or bath rituals. I think I've mentioned this in the self-love one, but you can just speak into the water that you are not only cleansing your body, but cleansing yourself of insert thing you are working on here, whatever limiting belief, or perhaps you've been working customer service and you want all of the people you were talking to's energy off of you so you can go back to your like authentic state without all of their extra energy on you. That's a way I've done a lot in the past. Another funny one actually though with water is you can, well, you can do the water glass, like a glass of water trick. A lot of people will do this thing where they will speak into one glass of water all that they are releasing, and then they'll speak into another glass of water all that they want to bring in, and then they will pour the water that they are releasing into a plant, and so that it is alchemizing into something fruitful even as they release it, and then drinking the water of what they want to bring into their life so that it is literally being brought into themselves as a person. But what I was going to say is I've done it for like cleansing cleansing with water, like dishes or laundry or cleaning like your bathroom. That could also technically be earth element because it is like physical labor, which earth element rules over. Another way you can use earth for cleansing, for like if it's going to be like, let's say it's like the Taurus full moon or something, um, you can do things like pruning or weeding your garden, like very literal things like that. Uh, tweezing your eyebrows. I know that sounds silly, but like things that are like physical, getting a haircut, any sort of like physical earthly realm, which would also include your physical body, uh, going eating a certain way that is more detoxing or more healthy. That's a good earth release ritual. You can also bury things. I find it hard to use that for release because it kind of doesn't feel like it's actually gone. Um, but if that's what you feel called to, that can be a really great release ritual. But there are a few other things I wanted to talk about when it comes to cleansing and releasing because there are so many ways to do your own version of a cleansing and releasing ritual. What mostly matters is your intention behind it and the fact you state your intention either to yourself, to your guides, or to whatever needs to be told about your statement. And then just making sure that you are being safe about it and making sure that you are kind of like ending your spell work with like a so mote it be or so it is or as I will it or something like that just to show that the ceremony is closed. Although I will say, especially with eclipses, sometimes I will just intentionally do things like take action or not take action on things in alignment with the energy rather than doing ritual work. Like this Libra full moon lunar eclipse, I was setting a lot of boundaries in my life, and that really aligned with the energy of Libra and Aries. I forgot there was some other things. Oh, I did get some pretty good karma. It's kind of personal stuff, but it Libra does rule justice, so sometimes it's like you do the hard thing, which for me was setting the boundary, and was literal and energetic boundaries. And after doing the hard thing, I got immediately rewarded, and I was like, oh, cool. um, that's actually one of the things I wanted to talk about. But first is the fact that we're not only under a full moon, but we're under the Mercury retrograde shadow period as I'm talking about this. So I wanted to talk about how release and cleansing doesn't only have to be during a full moon. It can be on a daily basis. I know a lot of people who are very sensitive to other people's energy or emotions tend to have to cleanse themselves daily or weekly or sometimes hourly, depending on what state they're in. But it's also not the only astrological transit to work under it being a full moon. You can also do Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde is interesting. I kind of talked about it on the Authentic Bitches podcast with Brenna. And so if you listened to that one, I might be repeating myself a little bit, but I feel like it is important. With it coming up, especially whether or not you're listening to it during Mercury retrograde or some other time of year, it will come at least 3 times a year in your life. So with Mercury retrograde, it's all about reassessing or recalibrating, anything that starts with RE, um, anything that's in the past, remembering, recollecting, and releasing. What will happen is Mercury, which rules the mind, has us looking back, and because Mercury will look like it's moving backwards in the sky. It's an optical illusion, which is pretty literal here because obviously, even though Mercury looks like it's going backwards and we're dealing with things from our past, it does not mean we've actually time traveled to our past. So it's still weirdly literal. Or a direct symbol, I suppose. But with Mercury retrograde moving backwards, our mind is moving backwards. So we're looking at old projects, old relationships, old places that we've lived in before. Anything that has died may feel like it's been resurrected. Anything that has been released will come up to test you to be like, are you sure that A, you've released and healed from this? Is there anything else from this wound you still need to like cleanse and heal? Or are you sure you want this removed from your life entirely? We will give you a second chance to really be sure. And it doesn't mean you're wrong about your initial decision to remove something from your life. It's just asking you, hey, are you sure? This is your second, third, fourth, whatever chance with this energy being in your life. And what's kind of beautiful about this form of releasing is it shows us that, let's say you released something and it wasn't during a Mercury retrograde. It was on a full moon or it was on a random Tuesday. It shows you that you don't have to be so hard on yourself about these decisions, because if it's meant to be in your life, the universe will present it to you again, and allow you to make a second decision and allow you to be like either very confident about your decision, like, wow, I'm really glad that I released this and this is just affirming it because right now it's back in my life and I still agree with my past self. Or it'll make you think twice and be like, actually, maybe it didn't serve me back then, but I'm in a different place now, and so maybe it'll serve me now. So that's one of the ways to look at Mercury retrograde, is it's allowing you to use your discernment with your present values moving forward, whether or not you want to keep old things in your life. It will also, it's very interesting, to be general, I will be in a place that I've technically been in before, but also haven't, like physically in a city and a state that I've been in the state, but I haven't been in the city. So it's like a weird, like kind of retrograde, kind of not. But it's also an old plan of mine that is finally going into place, and I'll be able to share more in the future, which I'm very excited about. But that can be kind of like how Mercury retrograde works, or the fact that it could be, let's say it's like an old idea. Like back when I was writing, I would always give the advice. So I was writing while I was spiritual for a little bit a few years ago, and I would always give advice to my fellow writer friends. During Mercury retrograde is the best time to work on old story ideas. Or let's say you're working on your present novel idea. It's a really good time to work on editing or revising. So something that's already finished, you're going back and looking through and reassessing, and you're not making any permanent changes just yet. You're gonna wait till usually after the Mercury retrograde, during what's called the shadow period. So to explain, all of the planets and all of the signs move continuously forward through degrees 1 through 29, aka 30, because once it's 0, it's 30 again. I mean, once it's 30, it's 0 again. And during a retrograde is the only time that a planet will look like it is going backwards in numbers. So let's say Mercury retrograde as, I don't know what it is right now, so I'm just going to make shit up. Let's say Mercury is at 26 degrees of Aquarius right now, and then it moves backwards through Mercury retrograde to 23 degrees of Mercury, and then it moves forward again after the retrograde. And so those shadow periods are right before the Mercury retrograde, when it first goes through 23, 24, 25, 26. Then Mercury retrograde starts and Mercury goes backwards 26, 25, 24, 23. Then the second shadow period, it goes forwards again 23, 24, 25, 26. Now, once it's reached 27, we're completely out of the Mercury retrograde. Not actual 27, it could be 1 through 8, whatever. Uh, but the point is, it's like, let's say you are going to work, but you forgot something at home, so you have to go back home, and then now you have to drive back to work again. So it's like, that's what a Mercury retrograde is like, you forgot something back where you were before, and you have to go get it, and then you have to go back to where you were going to in the first place. Or let's say you thought you forgot something, like, I left my sunglasses at home. You go home and your sunglasses aren't there. They were in your purse the whole freaking time. Or you don't have sunglasses. You're hallucinating. But the whole thing is that you're going back to somewhere you've been before, and then you're going back forward again. So in the shadow period, like where we are now, it's going to feel kind of like we're slowing down, or like things feel a little weird. And with the eclipse energy on top of it, it's just Wonderland vibes. But back to releasing and cleansing. So it can be something like removing friends or relationships or family members from your life because they are trampling on your boundaries and never respecting them, or um, or they're removing you. um, Bad habits, anything that's blocking you. These are all things that you can be releasing, because the absence of these things that don't serve you are what's going to allow the space for receiving what does. But it is kind of like a transaction in a way of putting some skin in the game before you ever receive what you're asking for. Like, for instance, last October, I did a cord cutting, which is a ritual where basically you can do it in several different ways, but the whole premise of it is that there are two people who have this energetic connection, and you represent that usually with two candles, and they're tied together with a cord to represent the energy that they've shared or the relationship that they've had, etc. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship, it can be platonic or familial. You can even do it like a relationship to a job, but they're tied together, and then you can either allow the candles to burn the cord if you're in a safe, fireproof environment, like putting them inside of a giant pot, like a cooking pot. Just be very safe if you do it that way. The other way is you can symbolically cut the cord with scissors and let the candles burn down. But I I did the previous way last October, and ever since I cut that energy out of my life, like through the cord cutting release ritual, slowly over the past, 5-6 months, I have kind of just, it's kind of beautiful. So like I released this very heavy energy that just did not serve me in any way, and reflected a lot of the ways that I did not show myself any sort of self-love or self-respect by allowing this energy to stay in my life. And when I removed it, I was able to recognize more easily when people were treating me with the love, care, and respect that I deserve. And now here I am, like after that ritual, which was, it wasn't during the eclipse, or it wasn't during the Aries Libra eclipse, it was during the last bit of the Scorpio Taurus eclipses that were happening last year. But it was during eclipse season. And now in the first set of eclipse seasons for this year, it's really cool because I would have to say that all the people that I am actively choosing to be in my life are just these really beautiful energies that are so kind and caring and respectful and like feel good to be around, and just such a blessing to have in my life. So just know that if you're one of those people, and I feel like you know who you are, um, that I'm extremely grateful and appreciative of you. And it's been such like an honor to like get to know you guys and to have you as part of my life. And it's so fascinating to see the results, because if you had told me even a month after I did that ritual that I would have these people in my life, it's not that I wouldn't believe you, it's that I would be a little bit skeptical. And I don't think I would understand to what degree it would be at, because there's always a level when you're releasing something that you wonder if you'll repeat the lesson when you replace what you've released. Because you can release a relationship or people or a job, but what happens if the next relationship, people, or jobs is just the same thing with a mask on? Um, but it's just been so interesting because through my experience with these people, I can very clearly tell the opposite actions that they take, and the way that everything is just so different, and I can clearly mark it. And so I highly recommend doing cleansing rituals because they are successful and worth it. And you feel like you're in this empty space for a while, and that can be so scary because you think, what if I'm never going to be able to have energy in my life that treats me correctly and that feels good to have around? And then next thing you know, you are surrounded in it and more of it, and you start to question if you've ever even actually had it in the first place until now, because of how beautiful the new energy is. Um, I would also say another really funny one was I had sold a lot of items, I think around the same time. I had sold all of my furniture and just like, oh, I'd sold my car as well. And I didn't know where I was gonna go. I didn't have a job. Like it was crazy. A crazy time to be alive. And I didn't know what I was like, what I was doing or where I was going or who I would become, but I just knew what wasn't working anymore and what felt painful and what felt misaligned. And I diligently released all of it. And it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And now I'm like reaping the rewards of that labor, and I kind of wish I could go back to her, to the version of me back in October of last year, and tell her she made it, and tell her she's fine, and tell her that it's only going to get better from here, and I've already been seeing the signs of that, and that she's just so worthy of all the good things that are happening, that all the good things that are coming into her life, all the things that are already here, and that it is terrifying, and she deserves to feel terrified, and you deserve to feel terrified, or sad, or angry, or frustrated, or whatever hard, difficult, challenging feeling that you're feeling right now while you are losing whatever it is you're losing, whatever you're releasing, even if it's just a bad habit, maybe that bad habit is what helped you get here alive today. And so it's like you always have to release things with gratitude and with the understanding that if it was a bad habit, it was a coping mechanism so that you would stay alive. And if it was a person that was in your life, it was because it felt safe. And it was interesting because I've released a lot of people, like a lot of people. A lot of my cleansing rituals have been a lot to do with people being removed from my energy, from my circle. And it scared me because I thought that that was all I was ever going to have in my life was loss. And to be able to like gain people, and it doesn't even have to be permanent, but just to feel like happy and honored to have them in my life for however long they're here is it's just such like a beautiful place to be. And it was worth going through the anger and the frustration and the fear because that was just my that was just my soul and my body craving what I have now. And I was able to finally give it to myself by showing myself we didn't deserve what we had in our life before, whether that was a lack of self-love, whether that was people who treated us like dirt, whether that was jobs that didn't feel aligned with our true purpose. Every time that I have let go of something, it has always been for the betterment, and I've always landed on my feet. I think I mentioned that actually in the Fool's Leap um, episode. But even back then, I don't think I knew what I know now of how it really freaking works. And it's so worth it. And it can be hard. I mean, I've lost family, and I've lost friends, and I've lost a husband, and I've lost a lot. I've lost jobs, I've lost dream paths, and it's all been worth it because it's like I feel more myself than I ever have. I feel like I'm finally aligned with the right people, like I'm finally going with my authenticity. And even though I'm not perfect at it, like setting boundaries is still hard. Like I said, I had to set a lot of boundaries this past weekend, and they were painful and they were difficult. But then I was immediately reminded with the people that respect my boundaries what it feels like to be around people that feel good, that are aligned with what matters to me. And I hope for you that you find the people and the places and the jobs and the passionate pursuits and whatever it is that you are seeking. I hope that when you are brave enough to let go of what has been holding you back, that the universe blesses you at least as well as it's blessed me. And I hope that this lunar eclipse has been treating you well, and that this Mercury retrograde will bring you blessings and really good ways to reintegrate old things and release old things. And I know that you will be brave enough to do it, and because I've done it and it's scary and I've come out the other side. So you can do it too, I promise. And it's gonna hurt, but it's like the ripping off a band-aid, except for months, years actually for me. But it's so worth it, and it's such a beautiful time for me right now. But this time last year was not, and so I hope this gives you a little bit of hope, and I hope that whatever you're going through, that it heals you and shows you what you truly, truly deserve in your life. Well, that finishes up this episode. Thank you so much for your patience while I didn't record the past few weeks. I have been incredibly busy, and I might be a little bit busy in the next few weeks as well, especially with the Mercury retrograde. I don't know timing wise how wonky things might get. So please